to Down Your Unders. Down Your Unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode, most likely 168 of the Art of War Down Under podcast. My name is, as always, is Adam Camilleri, and I'm joined by. So his name sounds like Smelly. It's something and sounds like Smelly, but we don't go after low hanging fruit here. We like to aim higher in life. So I'm just going to call him Stank Lord, because that's much higher in life than Lord. But his name's Aiden Smalley, and he's going to be joining us to assist in doing the Death Guard Index review. Seeing as there's something actually worth talking about here. We've been treading water on some of these factions. You've just heard probably the Space Marines Codex, but before that we were doing Votan, and we're possibly doing Sisters or Admech, some of these lower factions that have gotten a bit of a life breathed into them by the balanced data slate. We're recording this one a little bit ahead of time, so this is happening pre-LGT, which I didn't really know when we're going to get to record it, so we just slotted in when we could. But the great man, the great Stank Lord himself has joined us. Aiden, how you doing, brother? Welcome.
Well, so that's a name I've not been called before, but I'll take it. Thank you very much. Good, man. I'm good. I'm, in a much happier position than we were, like, let's say a month ago with the army in general. And like you said, LGT is coming up. Obviously, people listen to this probably after LGT, but that's coming up for me literally in 3 days. So
Yeah,
super exciting times at the moment, and I'm super hyped to get Death Guard out there because boy, are we off the life support machine now. We were treading water for a bit there, but we're actually all right now.
that's a great way of describing it, on the life support. And yeah, now you're learning to walk again with the balanced data slate. Some rehab is occurring for your faction. Maybe these are terms we can start using, these kind of health related terms, because that is what's happened. Like, you had an index that was unhealthy for your player base. But what is going to be cool about this episode, guys, is that we're only recording part 1 now pre-LGT. We're going to be recording part 2 in a week or two's time. So we're going to get the picture of how Aiden's done pushing his brand new Death Guard army pretty much into the Shark Tank of the London GT, one of the biggest tournaments, or the second biggest tournament in the world. Possibly could be the biggest this year. We do not know in this calendar year. So, mate, apologies. Art of War Down Under, a 2-part podcast. If you want to get the second part of this, go over to Patreon. You can find us there. It's a pretty good show. It's a pretty good time. See us there. Aiden, where can people catch more of you if they do like your dulcet tones?
If people like the sound of my voice, which I would be slightly disturbed at, but you never know. But if people also want to learn more about Death Guard, hopefully, I run my own podcast / YouTube channel called the Disgustingly Resilient Podcast, and we basically are dedicated to Death Guard in competitive play. So we have all sorts. We're doing series based on the basics of the army, faction fundamentals. We're going to start doing stuff like matchup specific stuff, and we have obviously a generic podcast episode with me and my co-host Will. So yeah, if you're interested in sort of you like what you hear here, maybe you are a Death Guard player, or maybe this gets you into Death Guard. You never know. You can search us up on YouTube and give us a listen and see what you think.
Beautiful. Hope you guys do. And we were chuckling about the irony of the name, as in, because Disgusting and Resilient being, the previous, I guess long-standing faction identity of having Feel No Pain, and being a thing that was, wholesalely removed from their identity over the past 2 editions, and then you named your podcast after it. Freaking hilarious. I love it so much.
Yeah, a bit of an ironic time in that one, because obviously they removed it, so we renamed our podcast for a couple of weeks to the Removed by GW podcast. But then they announced it back in the previews as a 2 command point stratagem, so we became the 2 command point podcast for a bit.
Love it. If you have enough CP podcasts.
yeah. If you overpriced stratagem podcast.
That is so good. Anyway, for those of you who do not know what this format is going to be, we're going to be going through every rule and notable data sheet for the Death Guard. I'll be leaning heavily on Mr. Smalley to get us through the notable data sheets, things that he thinks are relevant, the units that he rates. But we're going to be reading out just about every other rule up until therein and discussing their merits, the pros and the cons. We're going to be kicking it off, of course, with the army rule, which is Nurgle's Gift. If your army faction is Death Guard while an enemy unit is within contagion range of this unit, subtract 1 from their toughness characteristic of models in the enemy unit. Contagion range changes over the course of the battle as shown. First battle round, it is 3 inches. Then second battle round is 6 inches. And the third battle round onwards is 9 inches. This is very similar to what they had in the last edition. But is this a good rule in 10th edition?
It's an interesting rule. I think in ninth edition it was a strong rule because we had our toughness brackets were obviously a lot closer. Like toughness 8 would be is currently like what that's the current toughness 12 basically.
Yeah.
So brackets and how wounding worked in the maths wise, -1 toughness was a lot bigger of a deal back in ninth edition, whereas in 10th edition it's kind of been left behind by the times because it's still, don't get me wrong, it's still very impactful, sort of like in your infantry matchups. You know, toughness 4 to toughness 3 is extremely powerful. Toughness 3 to toughness 2 is very powerful, etc., etc. But toughness 12 to toughness 11, slightly less, slightly matters a lot less, and especially when most of your melee's capping out at strength 8. Toughness 10 to toughness 9, also again, it's not doing that much for you. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other things that key off contagion effects, which is on the units themselves. Some of them are okay. Some of them are kind of like naff and a bit too niche to be much use. Um, so when people read the army rule, it isn't just the minus. It's the contagions themselves. The
Yep.
-1 toughness is just one aspect of contagions, and obviously we'll get into the extra bits later. But the grow it does impact the game, and it does mean that Death Guard do a lot better, obviously, in those sort of like brawling scenarios, those close range
Yes.
encounters. So if you're on Planet Bowling Ball, which hopefully at no good event should you be, you might be out of luck a bit. But
Yes.
on most events that have nice solid terrain, because obviously there's been a huge push for terrain density, etc., over the last couple of years to make sure people have good boards to play on. The rule can come up a lot more than you think and have a lot more impacts, especially like I said in your infantry engagements, where it makes
Yeah.
a huge difference.
Really happy to hear that because yeah, on paper, like you said, this has become a either does nothing or does something kind of a rule. As in, you played against knights, probably did nothing of significant relevance. Whereas you played into a grindy demons and or well, sorry, be only smaller demons, but you played into custodies even could even matter because you have to be brawling in the middle. But this once again, it's a thematic rule because trench warfare, things like that. This is what the Death Guard are known for. But getting close to your opponent and mass, especially enough to make this kind of coverage work for you, at least on face value, doesn't seem to be something that Death Guard are able to easily do. Because when you get to the data sheets, you'll notice you don't really have a huge amount of agency to just launch yourself at your opponent and force these things upon them. But we will get to that more as we unpack it. Tell us about Spread the Sickness, which is their Plague Company detachment rule.
Okay, so we'll talk about what Spread the Sickness at its core is first. So before any changes that came in recently, so Spread the Sickness basically means that your entire army gets the sticky objectives rule. So if you control an objective at the start of the command phase, you will remain in control of that objective even if you move off the objective. So a lot of armies do have this rule, and a lot of people say it's useless because other armies have access to it. But there is genuine merit to having it on every single unit in your army compared to like just like intercessors or something like
Yeah.
that. So it's one of those rules. It's nice to have, and it is strong and it is good, but it's sort of also at the same time it doesn't really like impact your like output as much as other armies like Eldar having a reroll and everything like
Yeah.
that's always valuable. Some matchups you like sticky objectives just don't really ever come into play. Now don't get me wrong, when they do come into play it's very good and it's very useful and nice to have because you can get shot off an objective but still hold it, which is great. But there are some matchups where you're against something like World Eaters, which chance are if they charge something on an objective, there's not going to be anything left on the objective, and you're
Yeah.
going to lose it regardless. So it's kind of a dead rule in that scenario.
In
Um,
addition, that objective then gives off the contagion ability described previously, the last thing we just talked about as well. Is that any good? Does that combo with anything to make it of relevance?
God, again, it's so the problem with this one, and it's not bad specifically, the, because the stratagems which we'll get onto key off this infected objective keyword as well.
Hmm.
And it's one of those rules where when it actually pulls off, it can be really, really powerful. Like the extra effects you get from the infected objectives are very strong. Problem is, it's in this weird niche scenario where the enemy has to be within range of an objective, but you have to have controlled it the previous turn and held it till your command phase. So now it's infected, and then you still need to be holding it, and they need to
Yep.
then walk in within range of it. So when it comes up, it's very powerful, but the problem is it's just so niche and it comes up so rarely. Especially since the problem is that even in the stratagems, it's not key. They don't key off the same words. Some say within contagion range of an infected objective, whereas some say you must be within range of an infected objective marker. So it's a bit of like sometimes it's within 9 of an objective marker, or sometimes you have to literally be stood on an objective marker. So it's not even consistent. So sometimes you think you can do
Yep.
something and suddenly you can't.
I was about to say exactly that. The T's and C's aren't consistent when you look at the combo effects that you get from this. In addition, it's an extremely face-up play, as we like to say. This goes back to sometimes poker terminology, other card games, other TCG games. So your opponent could just be like, "So okay, you mean if I stay 6.1 objective inches from this objective until you're dead, this rule doesn't take effect." And then you're like, "Yes, sir." And you're like, "Okay, fair enough. That's easy."
Yeah, to be fair, that's kind of Death Guard as a faction in general. Like it's a very honest faction in a way. You're not going to be pulling many gotchas. You're going to be like, look, I move this far, I do this thing, that's it.
Wait, you're saying you don't have Phantasm coming up in your detachments in your stratagem suite, mate. I mean, I'm shocked.
Mate, if I get a Phantasm, it'll be like a 2-inch move Phantasm.
It would. You must go towards the closest enemy objective or something.
Oh no.
Yeah, no choices. The balanced data slate has been very lovely to the Death Guard and have injected a brand new rule in addition to the one we just read off for the detachment, for the same detachment.
Yeah.
So this is spread the sickness during the declared battle formation step. Select one of the sicknesses below. To the end of the battle, all units from your army with the Nurgle's gift ability gain the selected sickness. The first, we'll go tit for tat. First of which is Skull Squirm. While an enemy unit, these are all auras by the way, is within contagion range of this unit, worsen the ballistic skill and weapon skill characteristics of weapons equipped by models in the enemy unit by 1. I like that one quite a lot. That's actually one of my favorite ones. But I think the next one is the bee's knees. Tell us about it, mate.
Okay, so I believe it's called Rattle Joint Ague or something
Correct.
like that. Yep,
Yep.
see, I know it. And this one is while an opponent is within contagion range of a model with this ability, reduce its save characteristic by 1. So yeah, how about basically just getting free AP, but technically it's better, as we'll get into. It's that's quite a damage output increase.
Well, every unit in your army is an aura of increase AP by 1. Essentially on all weapons, every weapon, everything you've got, just increase AP by 1 aura. Pretty spice. Last one is Scabrous Solrot. While an enemy is in the contagion range of this unit, worsen the leadership and objective secured characteristics of models in the enemy unit by 1. I still like that one too. And it changed the parentheses at the end of the current rule 2, so enemy units within contagion range will have their characteristics modified, just in case there was any little T's and C's, weird and wonky interactions. How good is this little package?
So this little package has made the army actually not even just better; it's made the army fun. The ability to sort of, and again, you got to remember, people who's listening, you get to pick this after you know your opponent, so you can tailor this to the opponent that you're playing. And having the ability to do that, looking at a matchup and being like, right, what's going to be the important play here? Because as Adam said, even the one that people don't look at straight away, the -1 leadership and OC, in some matchups, that's actually the right choice to make. Don't get me wrong, it's going to be a lot more niche and a lot less often that's the right choice. But having it there and having it as a choice is great. And I've always said, like, I love rules that reward agency in the player to be able to make the right decision. And having this and looking at a matchup and being like, right, okay, I need to think now about what's going to be the correct one here is great. I mean, people were upset that we didn't get Feel No Pain Excellent back, but if you've played with the -1 weapon skill, -1 ballistic skill against certain armies, then what people need to remember is because it's a ballistic skill and a weapon skill modifier, it can stack with other negatives to hit, such as stealth or Tythus in close combat, and you can make things -2 to hit. And anyone that played back in the days of Eldar Altayok Flyer Spam, where we had -4 to hit, that was absurd, but -2 to hit is very, very annoying to deal with.
totally agree, mate. I mean, this is a really well designed threesome of abilities. I mean, Scabrous Soul Rot, I actually am a huge advocate for. You're playing against Necron warriors, whose entire, they don't deal you any damage. They just want to swarm you, drown your primary. Well, they're all OC1 now. It's a lot less of a problem to. Oh, and they are leadership 9 instead of 10, so they're much easier to battle shock if you want to force a couple of battle shocks again and again and again on the unit. You're playing against freaking unending swarm Tyranids, who their armor save is negligible. You do not need to negative their armor save. They don't have one. So, same as Orcs.
They're not dealing much damage to you as gaunts, are they? So you don't
exactly
need to
right.
weapon skill.
Yeah, you don't need to reduce weapon skill. You don't need to reduce an armor save. You just make sure they can't destroy your primary. And then all of a sudden, when they can't take away your objectives, all of a sudden you holding objectives with freaking spread the sickness initially. The first part of spread the sickness, sticking objectives becomes more relevant because you get to hold them for longer. Like it actually is a bit of a feeding into itself kind of effect. But in all honesty, like someone plays Unga Bunga Tower Crisis suits and you're just like, you can hit me on 5s before boss.
It's a good feeling. Another
Good
funny
place to
one,
be.
just quickly go on your Scabrous Soul Rot. So there's a unit called Noxious Blightbringer. Now, I don't recommend this for like a take all comers list, but if you really want to bully a Chaos Space Marines player, if you take that fella, his contagion range gets an extra -2 leadership. If you take Scabrous Soul Rot, it's -3 leadership. So enjoy taking your dark packs at -3 leadership and killing your own units.
Ooh, just blowing up. That is delicious. Oh, some chaos on chaos hate. I am all for it. Right.
It's just funny to watch them just be like, I don't actually want to use my army ability because I'll die.
No,
like, yes, you will die.
You turned me well off, sir. All right, into this stratagem, first of which is Ferric Blight is 1 CP. It happens in your shooting or the fight phase. Yeah, your shooting phase or the fight phase. 1 Death Guard unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. To the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, improve the AP characteristic of attack by 1. If the target of the attack is within contagion range of an effective objective marker you control and a critical wound is scored, increase it by 2 instead. So 1 CP for just +1 AP, shooting or fighting, is an extremely good stratagem and it's a very good going rate. And then to get a kicker, that if they're on an infected objective on a 6 to wound, you get another AP. Just a nice little cherry on top. This is a very good stratagem.
Yeah, it's +1 AP is always great. It starts getting gross when you manage to pull off the infected objective marker trick, because you've got to remember now the infected objective marker is also carrying an additional effect, so it can be -1 save. So now if I have, for example, a Death Shroud Terminator squad with Plague Spitter Gauntlets, which are normally AP 0, I'm going to use this stratagem. They're going to spray at you. Now they're AP 1. If you're within range of the infected objective marker to trigger the extra half, you're also going to be -1 save potentially. So now they're AP 2. And the stratagem says 6s to wound. Well, critical wounds deal additional AP. But all of our flamers are anti-infantry, which means they will actually trigger critical wounds on 4-ups and 2-ups. So you can actually go from a measly strength 3 AP 0 1 damage flamer to AP 3 flamers that automatically wound on 4-ups. And you can have 7 of them in a squad of Death Shroud, which is hilarious.
And there could be a -1 toughness as well there, yeah?
Yep. Yeah. So you can you can.
Not that matters with the anti, but still cute.
Yeah, still cute. And like you said, so you can, with this stratagem potentially, and the combination with Spread the Sickness, spike an extra 3 AP on any attack and ability. That gets wild. But even just using it for just the 1 AP and none of the extra effects, like you're never going to complain about having an extra AP on any attacker in the game at any point.
Absolutely right. All right, what's the next one, mate?
So the next one is going to be, I have on my screen, let me pull it up a second. So I have Boil Blight on my screen. So Boil Blight is a 1 command point stratagem, and this is a bit weirdly worded. So you pick one of your units, and then you pick an enemy unit that is within contagion range of that unit. And now this is the weird bit, because you pick one of your units, but this effect is now going to benefit your entire army. So until the end of the phase, any one of your units that fires at that unit is treated as having the ignores cover and the heavy keyword on all of its ranged weapons. So
really weird combo of what it's giving you. North cover is very valuable, but heavy might not come up that often. But mate, tell us more.
So this one's a weird one. When I first read it, I was like, "Oh, that's going to be really niche and not get used much." It's probably one of my most used stratagems, because the ability to I play a lot with plague burst crawlers, and plague burst
Yes.
crawlers who can sit still, potentially ignore modifiers if you have Mortar in the list, can basically, if you manage to tag a unit with Boil Blight, will be hitting them on twos, ignoring cover,
Yeah.
and that's for every single plague burst crawler, not just one of them.
Very
And
nice.
yeah, so you can pick if you can get within range of a key unit, which you can use fast units like bloat drones,
Hmm.
etc., to basically get contagion range on someone. You can then lob 3d6 plus 9 with blast extra shots
Mm.
onto a unit with lethal hits at AP1, ignoring the cover. It adds up, and again, if you've got that extra contagion, that's potentially -1 save as well. So it's potentially a strength 8 AP2 ignores cover, and
Yep.
you can have it basically just delete any unit. I call it like a pseudo oath of moment with a plague burst crawlers because you just pick a unit and you go, that's going to die this turn.
Dude, that is really actually when you unpack it like that, that is a beautiful little combo piece. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it honestly is. When you manage to pull it off, and there's some cheeky ways you can pull it off using like cultist scout moves. You get first turn, scout 6, move 6, advance. You hold an objective. Enemies behind a wall, you can string out. So you hold the objective. You've strung out. Now you're within 3 inches of the guy behind the unit behind a wall. Boil blight it, and then just have all your mortars unleash on it. It
Yeah,
can really take you by surprise.
beautiful. It almost seems like you're turning the unit into a sentinel for Imperial Guard with
Yeah,
their
yeah,
artillery combos. Anyway, Sangus Flux, one
yes.
CP. Um, in the fight phase, while Death Guard unit from your army has not been selected to fight this phase, until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by models in your unit have the sustained hits 1 ability. While your unit is within a range of an effective objective marker, you have sustained hits 2. Wish this was in the shooting phase, but I guess we'll take it. I do not know what units this is good on, though. You need to tell us that, mate.
The best units for this one are usually going to be either if you have a big brick of Plague Marines, because our Plague Marines for a battle line unit can pack a lot of Power Fist stat equivalents. Like
Yep.
in a 10-man unit, you can effectively have 5 Power Fists, which is kind of daft. And the other thing that people need to remember is this also combos with other units such as the Biologist Putrefier. The Biologist Putrefier gives the unit that he joins lethal hits, and
Oh
you
yeah.
cause critical hits on a 5+, which means if you then use a stratagem on that, they will also be triggering on a 5-up. So you can have sustained hits, 1 lethal hits going off on a 5-up with potentially 15 power fist attacks from a unit,
Yeah, boy.
which is very nice. Also,
Mm.
Death Shroud, they have 4 attacks per guy. You can also go for siphon profiles. Not that I'd really recommend it, but if you like you say you're running to gaunts, the AP is not going to help you, so you might as well. So you get more chances to roll 6s because that's 8 attacks per guy, so lots of chances to get it. And also, I've weirdly used this one even on like Mortarion, who only has 5 attacks. Sometimes you'll find yourself in scenarios where you're in combat with something and it has to die or Mortarion dies, so you can throw it out and just pray you spike like 2 6s, and it can happen. Like it's just always a good like stratagem to have in the bag, especially if it
Mm.
was 2 command points. I wouldn't be risking it like that, and I wouldn't recommend you do it unless it's dire play. But for 1 command point to be able to use at any point, it's sustained hits 1. You're never going to complain. And again, if you
Ah,
manage to ever pull it off on an infected objective marker, sustained hit 2 is when stuff starts getting really wild. Especially if you, like I said, you're doing it on 5-ups, then that
yeah.
unit's going to die.
Do you have any full rerolls to hit in combat?
We do actually. You can take the Lord of Contagion, who can join Terminator units, and he does give the unit full rerolls to hit, which I actually recommend with Blight Lord Terminators because the Blight Lords are a tough unit. That's good. That for the points is quite durable, but their output is somewhat lacking. A
Mm.
lot of people want to increase their shooting output, which I'm not really sure why, given it's just bolt guns. Like an AP0 bolt gun is still a bolt gun, no matter how many rerolls you give it. So I'd rather give them because they have AP2 melee with 4 attacks per guy, and I'd
Yep.
find it more better to fish for the lethal hits with that. And again, you can give it sustained and lethal hits, and then just fish for the 6s, and it
Yep.
helps you deal with something like a lot of common thing that'll happen is you'll have Blight Lord Terminators in a 10-man break, get charged by like a rhino, and then you're stuck there because we have no fallback and
Yep.
charge, and
Yep.
you're just there forever. So having been able to fish for 6s to just lethal hit it to death, obviously helps deal with that issue.
Mm. All right. What's the next one, mate?
So the next one, oh look, it's disgustingly resilient.
Yay!
Hey, subscribe.
Well done.
So this is 2 command points. So it's used in the fight phase when an enemy unit has selected its target. So, an opponent has selected you as one of its targets for its melee swings. One Death Guard unit that you select as the target was selected by the title attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack is allocated to a model in your unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. So 2 command points in the fight phase, pick one of your units, it's -1 damage until the end of the phase. It's this is the weird thing. This should honestly be like the Death Guard strategy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This should be the one everyone expects to use. This is the one I use the least because
Yep.
it's so expensive. 2 command points is expensive for that, and -1 damage is good. I'll never say it's not good. It is great, but sitting on 2 command points to do something like that, like for the same cost, I could have used Ferric Blight and Sanguinous Flux and
Correct.
killed the
Correct.
thing that's going to swing at me.
Yeah. You could be wielding 2 good offensive 1 CPs, or sitting with 2 CP, through your opponent's turn, hoping that they charge you and you get to do something with Disgusting Resilient. I mean, in the Custodies matchup where they're all, damage 2 and stuff, maybe this is worth doing. But apart from that, I can't think of another instance where there's going to be a fight phase with max damage 2 that I care about.
And it's made even worse by the fact that they give us a 70-point character, the Sorcerer and Terminator armor, who does this on a 2-up for free.
Does it? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he does the exact same rule on a 2-up for free.
Yeah.
So it's like you only use it in the most dire circumstances where you're like, right, this guy has to live this turn. Otherwise, it's probably not worth the investment because, like you said, 2 offensive strats will probably get you more impact on a game than this 1 defensive.
All right, Gifts of Decay is up next. 1 CP happens in your command phase, and 1 Death Guard model from your army. Your model gains up to D3 lost wounds. If your model's unit is within contagion range of an infected objective, you regain flat 3 instead. I mean, is this a good way of healing a tank or Mortarion or something like that? Does this come up much?
I use it on Mortarion quite a lot. Morty, people still have their idea in head that Mortarion, don't worry, is a key component to the army, but people still think Morty's like this monster that's going to walk around with like 7 D3 plus 3
Dude.
damage attacks at strength a billion.
I had Morty charge 5 infiltrators, and he killed 3 of them, and I was like, "What the hell was that? Like, what? Are you a Primarch, mate? Are you a Primarch? What happened?"
Morty needs to go to the gym a bit.
He's a noodle. He's a wet noodle. He's throwing arms, gone limp. I don't know what's up.
Yeah, well, it's not his fault. That scythe's, it's only like 12 foot tall, and it's probably not sharp, and it's heavy to swing. But people like to shoot Morty, and he's obviously one of the toughest units. He is tough. I'll give him that. He's tough. Toughness 12, 4-up invulnerable, 2-up save, and a 5-up feel no pain is tough. So if people really want to keep shooting at him, feel free to keep using the stratagem because again, it gets extra value on him because healing wounds is great. Healing wounds with a feel no pain is again another chance to save that wound on a feel no pain, which can then be saved again. So it gets extra value. It's a good thing. It can also help you get out of bracketing if you really need it. But it's cute. It's a cute stratagem, I'd say. You use it if you're feeling a bit. You're like, oh, Morty's a little under the weather there. I'll just top him up. I don't like the look of that Lancer. It's probably going to hurt him next turn. Let's make sure he's going to live. But again, you're more looking at your Ferric Blight, your Sanguinous Flux, and your Boil Blight rather than this. This is like I said. Will the free wounds matter? Yeah, go on.
Yeah. It's literally, my opponent has fallen into the trap of thinking Morty is worth killing. Cool. I want them to continue for as long as I can. Let's keep giving him wounds back.
Yeah, it's also just nice. It's just good bad manners when you pass all your invulns and they've shot their entire army and took 3 wounds off Morty, and you're like, I'm just gonna make you feel even worse and just heal them back.
Psychological warfare. I love it. Good stuff. All right, there is one more. Give it to us.
Yes, so last one is Cloud of Flies, which is when you're in your opponent's shooting phase, just after they select their target, your one Death Guard unit from your army that was selected as the attacks gets the stealth ability until the end of the phase. So it's 1 command point, give a unit -1 to be hit in the shooting phase. So I both have an issue with the stratagem and like this stratagem. It is a good stratagem. 1 CP for -1 to hit is nice. The problem is Chaos Space Marines have the exact same stratagem but better. So and it's their Nurgle themed one. So the Nurgle dedicated Legion has a worse version of the same stratagem named the same in their book, because theirs gives a unit lone op instead if the Nurgle marks, where we just get the stealth. Now, don't get me wrong, I still use this stratagem a lot. It is good. It's also nice because it means you can use smoke screen on the vehicles that have smoke, like Land Raiders, Predators, and then still use Cloud of Flies on something like Morty or a Plague Burst Crawler.
Yeah.
So it's good. I use it a lot, especially we talk about the -1 ballistic skill, -1 weapon skill. If you manage to be really cheeky and, like you said before, get a crisis unit within contagion range, maybe they have to take an angle that puts them in contagion range. You just go, okay, what are you shooting? And as soon as they declare it, you go, yep, Cloud of Flies, enjoy -2 to hit. And it can really blunt a lot of damage coming out. So it's a good stratagem. As much as I have my grievances with it, I use it a lot.
Man, I was going to make such a meme out of this one. You did it all already for me. I was going to lull that the best Nurgle strat isn't in freaking Death Guard. Dude, it might not. It might be that the second best Nurgle strat isn't even in Death Guard as well. It could be in the Demons book. Probably. Yeah, I've got no idea what Nurgle strats are.
I've cried myself to sleep or in the shower too many times over this stratagem, so we won't linger on it.
But Cloud of Flies, that's what it used to do. That's what it's done for 2 editions.
Oh yeah, it used to literally be. Yeah, it was. You can't be shot if you're more than 12 inches away.
Yeah.
And the amount of times your opponent would like line up you see him lining all this stuff, and you're just there like with a grin on your face, like what you smiling like nothing.
Yeah, poker face. Bring it in. Come on.
Like, okay. And you're like, oh, and he's like, okay, I've done one movement. You're like, so you are confirming you're going into your shooting phase? He's like, yeah, why? And you're like, Cloud of Flies.
Cloud of Flies.
And you just see the face drop as the realization hits him, and you're like, sorry.
Yeah. But anyway, as far as a package of stratagems go, it is actually pretty good. A couple of stinkers that only key off in the fight phase, Disgusting Resilient, and the Flux only keying off in the fight phase, which isn't where a lot of 10th edition is happening right now, and Gifts of Decay being mediocre. But, man, Ferric Blight, Boil Blight, and Cloud of Flies, all pretty legit.
Yeah, you'll be using Ferric Blight pretty much every turn. Boil Blight when it comes up, and you've especially if you're in Plague Burst Crawls, and Cloud of Flies is always just nice to have as a defensive tool. So, and honestly, they're all 1 command points. The ones that matter are 1 command point. So, always a bonus to have that.
Yep, absolutely. All right, mate. Let's go into the enhancements. The first of which is Living Plague, and pretty much just says add 3 inches to the range of the bearers or abilities, including Nurgle's Gift. Is this any good?
Ask me a month ago, I'd say no. Ask me now is very good, because obviously that means our extra effects of our contagions are extended. And one of the most fun things I like to do with this is if you're against a Tau player and you put it on like a lone Chaos Lord or even free Death Shroud of a Lord in it, and turn 3, they want to come down. They're like, okay, it's go time. Our Tau rules are on now. They drop down, and then you rapid ingress within 12 of them, and then tag them with the -1 ballistic skill. So they drop down, and they're just going to be -2 to hit at whatever they shoot, which is quite funny. But
delicious.
Extra range on contagions, especially with how impactful they are now, is really good in general. It allows a model to come in from Deep Strike and put a unit in contagion range. You can put it on an Icon Bearer who then, for 1 turn, can have 15-inch aura of contagion range, which is daft. Mortarion can stack this with other people because he can choose to extend contagions by 3, so you can then extend it by 6 on a unit. So they can technically have, because there's no cap on it, which is quite interesting in this edition. There's no cap on contagion range, whereas previous edition it was 12.
Yep.
So you can technically get a unit up to like 15, like I said, even 18 if you have an Icon Bearer, Living Plague, and Morty. You can have a unit of an 18-inch contagion range, which, given that could be spread over a 10-man Plague Marine unit who strings out, that's most of the board.
It is. It's very good. This will run you 20 points for the privilege.
Yeah, it's not. It's a little expensive, but it's probably the best one. If you were going to run one, I'd probably pick this one.
What's the next one, mate?
Do I have to talk about the droning?
No, okay, I'll do it. It's the aura of literally, there is no words. There's no word. I don't know what happened to these words, but they got droned literally out of my brain because I read them and none of them meant anything. All right. While an enemy unit is within contagion range of the bearer, each time the unit fails a battle shock test, roll a 1d6. On a 2 to 5, they suffer 1 mortal wound, not even D3. Woo. And on a 6, they suffer D3. It doesn't even trigger battle shock tests. If it was like whilst you're in contagion range at the start of every command phase or some shit, you can trigger a battle shock, or you take a battle shock, everyone take a battle shock. This is one of the worst enhancements I've ever read.
Yeah.
The fact that it costs points is insulting.
Yeah, the rumors said it was going to be like when we get rumors start coming out, leaks, whatnot. It
Yeah.
was everyone was saying it's D3 mortal wounds on a 2-5. Now that would be interesting because plague burst crawls can force battle shock tests. So
Correct.
that's not bad. You can put it on the model that gives the aura of -2 leadership. It maybe can actually start doing some damage. Then the problem is it doesn't, and you have to jump through the hoops of making them fail a battle shock test, which if it's in the command phase, they can also auto pass. Not that the threat of one mortal wound is ever going to make someone do
No.
that. You have to be near them with the one character that has the enhancement, and then it still even has a chance to roll a 1 and do literally nothing.
Dear me, oh my! This is, like I was just said. I think this is the worst enhancement possibly in the game. We're gonna actually, we will see if anybody thinks that they have an enhancement worse than the droning, and then I will just say, "You're droning on, sir." Boom, boom. Moving on. Moving on with my life.
Yeah,
all right, what's the next one, mate?
Is it 10 points? That one?
It's 10 points. It should be free. Even if it was free, I wouldn't take it because I wouldn't want to
No.
write down
I
or
was
have
about
to
to say,
explain.
if you have 10 points in your list, just play with 1919. Don't
Have some
embarrass
pride.
yourself by putting this in
Have
your
some
list. Yeah.
pride.
Don't
Have
lower
some
yourself.
dignity. All right, Deadly Pathogen. Tell us about it.
So Deadly Pathogen is fairly straightforward. Obviously you put on Death Guard character. You add 1 to the strength and attacks of the bearer's melee weapons, which is not bad. And if he's within contagion range of an infected, he's within range, not contagion. Again, this is where it gets confusing. So it's not within contagion range of infected objective marker. It's within range of the objective marker. So it's the 3 inches. You get to add 2 to your strengths and attacks instead. Now, as we said there, if you had the spare points in your list, this is probably the one you throw in if you've got like 15 spare points because +1 strength, +1 attack, it's okay. It's not bad.
Not bad.
It's not really going to change the game or impact. It's not like an enhancement that changes how you play massively, but every so often having an extra attack to slap someone with, it's okay. If you ever pull off the +2, then bonus.
Yep, exactly right. Yep. Last one is Shamble Rot, and possibly the second best. Death Guard model only, of course. Each time the bearer's unit is selected as a target of an enemy charge, until the end of the phase, subtract 2 from the charge rolls made from the enemy unit. So you just get a unit that is -2 to be charged. Not bad. In some matchups, it will be very good. In some matchups, it'll do literally nothing, and it will run you 25 points. So it is the most expensive one. As far as I'm concerned, the only one you build into your list is Living Plague, yeah? The rest of them is see how the rest ends up, and then maybe ifs and buts.
Yeah, like Shamble Rot's not bad, but again, it's more to do with like the meta of the game at the moment. Melee's not the in thing, and it being the most expensive. And like you said, you come across Talgratz, you've got a stratagem that does literally nothing. An enhancement, but it's for 25 points. 10 more points is a base unit of 3 Nurglings. Just do that instead.
Correct.
It could be good though if Melee does have there's an overhaul and somehow Melee becomes the meta, then Shamble Rot becomes actually really good. So it's not bad, but it doesn't have a place at the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't make sense right now. It could make sense in the future, but like I said, I think just Living Plague is very, very good, especially with the changes to. It adds 3 of the auras, which accounts for the new stuff that got added, the new Spread the Sickness rules, which are all auras. I think it's extremely potent, extremely worth taking, and I would be building it into most of my lists.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think I have it in every list at the moment. Living Plague. It's just nice to have it. It's just anything that helps you get your contagions because they're now that impactful. It's just good. So just take it. If you got 20 points, fit it in.
All right, and now that brings us to the end of the rules breakdown for the Death Guard. We're going to jump into the data sheets, the notable data sheets. So we're going to get a couple of HQs. We'll do 2 HQs, and then we'll probably do Mortarion as well. And then we're going to do a couple of infantry, a couple of tanks and monsters and beasties. But Aiden, take us to a HQ of note, mate.
Okay, so if we're not covering Morty, we'll go for Lord of Virulence first because I think the Lord of Virulence is an exceptionally strong unit, especially for the way I like to play Death Guard. So the Lord of Virulence is your sort of standard Terminator Lord stat line. So he's toughness 6 because all Death Guard Terminators are T6 instead of 5 because obviously we're +1 toughness. He's 6 wounds with a 2 up save and a 4 up invulnerable. He's equipped with a Twin Plague Spewer, so he has an anti-infantry 2+ heavy flamer, so it's strength 5 AP 1/1 damage, and it has twin linked, which is a little random, as we'll get onto that. But it's not bad. It's a good weapon to have. It's anti-infantry 2+. Any infantry, doesn't matter how tough it is, you're wounded on a 2. Nice. And he also comes with a heavy Plague Fist, which unfortunately for some reason does make him weapon skill 3. It's very heavy apparently. It's a big heavy fist.
Massive.
But but it's still 5 attacks at strength 8, AP 2, 2 damage with lethal hits. Nothing to nothing's going to
It's
light the
fine.
world on fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can smack a couple Marines to death. It's pretty good. But the reason you take this guy is because of his actual abilities. So obviously deep strike because he's Terminator. I don't think I need to cover that stuff. But
Nah.
his rules are, the first one is the Master of Destruction, which is while this model is leading a unit, each time that unit makes a ranged attack, you can reroll the wound roll. So
Very nice.
yep, solid. Reroll wounds is obviously an incredibly strong ability to have, especially when you're conjoining with a unit of Death Shroud Terminators that have up to 7d6 anti-infantry 4+ flamers. So being able to re-roll your wounds, which automatically wound on a 4-up, you can have a 75% conversion rate on average of all your wounds, which is, again, just, you can drown people in dice. You can put a Ferric Blight on it. They're in contagion range, like now IP2. You'd be surprised how much elite infantry those little strength 3 flamers can wipe away. You're dropping Custodes to their invuln with anti-infantry 4+ flamers en masse. That is not what Custodes want to see.
This next ability is kind of saucy, but I'm trying to wrap my head around actual implications outside just PBCs. Give us the breakdown, mate.
So each time a friendly Death Guard model makes an attack with a blast weapon that targets a unit that is visible to this model, so it doesn't have a range, just has to be visible, add 1 to the hit roll of that attack, and the attack has the ignores cover ability. So it only applies to blast weapons, but there is more than you'd think in the codex. So obviously the main application is Plague Burst Crawlers. So again, you can potentially have, this is another, just like Boil Blight, the function's basically the same. The bonus being they don't have to stay still, because obviously heavy gives them the +1 to hit. This just gives them +1 to hit regardless. So you will kind of have Plague Burst Crawlers hitting on 2s out of line of sight and ignoring cover. It also works on Defiler battle cannons. Battle cannons have a good strength and damage, strength 10 AP, damage free, let down by the AP, which is 1, because it's normally just negated by cover. Now you get to ignore the cover, which is nice. Plus, again, you think about contagion range. Now it's potentially AP2, so that really increases that. Another good cute one is the Hellbrute Plasma Cannon, because we'll get onto it in notable units probably, but the Hellbrute, if it hits something with a ranged attack, makes it count as being within contagion range, so you can push out your contagions further. So with a plasma cannon, you're now hitting on 2s, so the chances of getting that hit are a lot higher. Plus, you get D3 shots compared to a lot of people think the last cannon is good, but it's 1 shot. Don't risk it. So again, it comes into play there. Also, you have like Havoc launchers on all your Chaos vehicles because they're just free and they're blast weapons. Grenades from your biologist putrefier. He has a special little strength 5 AP1 damage 2 grenade. Again, it's blast. There's more blast than you think in the book. It's all from weird places like Mortarion Spell. Again, gets ignores cover from this because it's blast.
That's funny.
But obviously the main application is probably Plague Burst Crawlers, but it comes into play a lot more, and the impact that Plague Burst Crawlers can have on the game is big enough to just warrant that. But if you just had that rule, you'd think, oh, he's a bit niche. But that rule combined with the fact he just gives his unit rerolls to wound and shooting, the Blight Barbarian is like the cherry on the cake.
It is,
So those two together make him just, for 100 points, the guy.
100 points.
He still smacks in combat as well. He's not the worst in combat. Good stat line, good defensive, and then these 2 abilities for 100 points. You can't go wrong.
I totally agree. The abilities are fantastic. All right, what is another HQ, mate?
I'm going to go for Typhus. Typhus is honestly, I don't know why they points dropped him. I thought he was already excellent. And he's just such a cool unit. So Typhus is the same stat line of a Lord. However, Typhus, remember to wear his running shoes because he's got a movement 5. Don't know why, but I think it's because he's got hooves. Maybe it's because he's got hooves.
You must be right.
Yeah. So he's also got a better melee output. So he's got either 5 attacks with the slam, the strike, which is weapon skill 2, strength 9, AP 2, and flat 3 damage. So that's a good. That's a good, strong melee profile. It's a bit sad that he has the same amount of attacks as Mortarion, but and he can also sweep for 10 attacks at strength 6, AP 1, and damage 1, which, you go against Gaunts, you're not going to complain. But again, you've got a good stat line there, but his magic comes in his abilities. So Typhus has the innate ability that whenever he is leading a unit, each time a melee attack is made against that unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So this means if you take the -1 ballistic skill, -1 weapon skill, anyone in combat with Typhus is -2 to hit. And when
Really
he's in
good.
something like 6 Death Shroud, that is a brawling unit that is not
Mhm.
going to get out brawled by mostly anything in the game. If
Mm.
you're in like a World Eaters matchup, that's not a unit because again, it's going to have the Overwatch from Flamers as well. You don't want to go near
Yes.
this thing. So
Do
this thing can
not.
sit in the mid board and be like, yeah, come try it. Come on, enjoy
Mm.
hitting on 5s.
Custodian's hitting on 4s. Hilarious.
That's so funny.
That's so good.
They're like, what do you mean I hit on 4s? This is guardsman. um, And then Typhus' other ability, which again, this is another fantastic ability, is the Eater Plague. So it's a psychic ability, but it's not a shooting attack. I need to clarify this. It goes off in the shooting phase, but it's not a shooting attack. So in your shooting phase, you select one enemy unit with an 18 of this model, invisible, and you roll a d6. And on a 1, you do take d3 mortal wounds yourself, but you're never going to roll a 1. Never happens. Don't worry
Never.
about
Never heard of it. Nah, never heard of it.
it. On a 2 to 5, the enemy unit's going to suffer d6 mortal wounds, and on a 6,
Ooh.
they suffer d3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So the good thing about this is it means it can shoot into combat because again, it's not a shooting attack; it's just an ability. You can also just fling mortals at stuff you have no right in wounding, such as like land raiders and really high toughness vehicles. And my favorite thing is you also get to shoot lone ops with it. So if that Caladius
Correct.
assassin has annoyed
Mhm.
you for the 5th game in a row, all you need to do is roll 1, 2 up, followed by a 50-50 chance to just one-shot the thing off the planet.
Dude, neurolictors are going to be everywhere. There's going to be so many little infuriating lone ops all over the place. Not that there wasn't already, but there's going to be more, I believe. So yeah, abilities like this are just money.
Yeah. So being able
Only
to
100
just pick
points.
something. Yeah,
Only
again.
100 points again. 100. Amazing.
I don't know what they're thinking, because that ability is very good. Also, it's not on his sheet, but it should be mentioned if Typhus can join Poxwalkers as well as Death Shroud Terminators, and any model he kills with this psychic ability or his melee will also resurrect Poxwalkers in the unit. So if
Yep.
you get 6 mortal wounds and kill 6 guardsmen, you can resurrect 6 Poxwalkers, which then can give you movement. You can place them in coherency, so you get extra movement out of it,
Yeah.
etc. It's just again, he's just a really solid, and you got all these abilities on top of an extremely strong melee profile at strength 9, AP2, and damage 3.
Yeah, very enticing. All right, give us some infantry. Of course, we're probably going to go to Death Shroud and Plague Marines, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to go. A lot of people are sort of down on Plague Marines, but I honestly think they're actually when you Plague Marines, people kind of forget that Plague Marines are a battle line unit, and they're now 80 points for 5, which is ludicrous given intercessors cost more than
Dude.
them. And
Well,
when you
the
actually,
fact that they have one less movement, sure, but they got one more freaking toughness
yep,
than an intercessor, and an intercessor, cool. Congrats, you got a Rend 1 gun. You can have you have a box of chocolates.
yeah,
Plague Marines. Pick your
Plague Marine
poison.
loadout options are insane. So in a 5-man squad, you can rock 3 Power Fists, 2
Mhm.
Plasma Guns, and then still have something like a Blight Launcher, Metal Gun. You can, or even an Anti-Infantry 2 plus Flamer. Like compared to other battle line units, which usually rock, like you said, bolt guns, las guns,
Mhm.
you get all the special weapons. It's basically a special weapon squad. Um,
Yep. Yep.
and it can melee, it can shoot, it can do all these things. And for the low price that they're at, okay. I think the biggest problem people have is they're still hung up on them being really tough and really hard to kill. But if you actually just start playing them more like a normal marine body, you actually realize how stupid the value is on these
Mm.
models.
Mhm.
Again, you have a 10-man unit that puts out 15 lethal hitting power fist attacks, followed up by 6 plasma gun shots, 4 blight launcher shots, and then you've still got all the heavy normal plague knife attacks, which all have lethal hits, and then a robotic weapon as well. Like if you do the maths on it, especially if you bring something like a biologist putrefier alongside this one, because again, this is a squad that can be joined by the Virions. I'd always recommend the biologist putrefier because he gives them all the weapons lethal hits, including plasma guns, melter guns, etc. And they
Yep.
all lethal hit on a 5-up. This unit can quite easily pick up a land raider with like seven guys in a biology putrefier. If they go in
Damn.
and use the free grenade strat, because again he gives them free grenade strat before this charge, they will on average with the shooting and the melee pick up a land raider, which is it's 110 points for 7,
Bonkers.
and you're killing land
Bonkers.
raiders.
Yeah.
Again, I think people are just too hung up on playing them as this really like back in the Armor of Contempt meta when they were -1 damage and -1 AP.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they don't do that anymore. You can't stand in the open and live. But if you're looking at a unit that's really good at bullying weaker units or just up trading, I think Steve Trimble recently ran like 60 of the damn things.
Yeah.
Just in 6 rounds, just ran people
He
down.
did. Yeah, he did, and he did extremely well. I think he came fourth in
Yeah.
at the Charity Hammer, Shark Tank RTT. So extremely potent. I actually don't think we want to talk about Death Shroud because I think Death Shroud are pretty much, you look at the unit and you can assume everything you need to know already. You know exactly what that unit is. I kind
Yeah.
of want to talk about Poxwalkers, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
I'm good with that. Yeah, so Poxwalkers are an interesting one. To be honest, I think Poxwalkers and Cultists are both interesting.
Yeah.
But we'll go with the Poxwalker. So Poxwalker is 50 points for 10 guys, so 5 points a model, and it's movement 4, and it doesn't really do much in combat. It's 2 attacks hitting on a 5, but it does have lethal hits, which is cute.
I just
But
love that why have they got 2 attacks? It's hilarious, but
I
for
don't
some reason
know.
they've got 2 attacks.
But what they do have, which is very good, is feel no pain 5 up, because you don't care if you have a T-shirt save. A 6 up's no good, or a guardsman save a 5 up. But a 5 up feel no pain is basically an unrenderable 5 up save. Um,
Correct.
and this unit can also be taken in 20. Like I said, we can take by Typhus, which can then regenerate models with his spell, etc. They do also resurrect if they kill models. Again, don't expect much out of them, but what I've used these guys for, because I used to run a unit of 20. I've took them out recently, but it's more to do with the things other players are bringing, like aggressor bombs, really like blasting these things. But
Yes.
strategic reserve in 20, I know it sounds strange because you think no one's going to sneak 20 in, but because they're such a low threat unit, people don't really put too much effort to screen them out because it's not going to do anything. It's just poxwalkers. But if you manage to get 20 poxwalkers on an objective, especially if they're locked in combat, if you have typhus in their bonus points and you're giving out -2 to be hit, I've not really come across much things in the game that can basically clear them out in an activation. Um, and you can just really start clogging up the board. And again, if they can't clear it in activation, especially if you have Typhus in there, Typhus can swing back. He can potentially pick up a couple models, which then means Poxwalkers come back. The Poxwalkers then swing, and then they could maybe pick up 1 or 2 models, and then again they're coming back, and it just the scales of the combat just keep tipping slightly more and more in your favor. And if people haven't got the tools to deal with this big blob of feel no pain, it can kind of be a unit that can just sit on a point and be unapproachable almost. Not to mention if you come across a game where your opponent world eaters will tear through this, but just having a big screen is also just good to have.
Agreed, man. Well, just the going rate on that chassis, 5 points for a toughness 4 wound with a 5 up feel no pain. That is all I am looking at here, and that's all I need to know. Even if they didn't come back, even if they didn't give out the contagions, the Nurgle's gifts, and all that stuff, even if they weren't a debuffing aura of just a nonsense unit, why is this nonsense unit making my army worse? What? Why have they got 2 attacks each? I look at these guys and I'm just like, damn. I mean, that movement 4 is very stark. I mean, you run into probably by the time you're hearing this, a dead Thunderfire cannon. When we're talking about things like, I guess, a mole launcher from Votan, I guess it's a night spinner, and you're like, your movement 2 and cannot advance from a night spinner. And you're like, oh no, sweet,
at that
sweet
point,
lord,
probably consider reserves.
Yeah, you put it in reserve, or it deploys on an objective, and that's it. That's all
exactly.
she wrote.
You can just sit on your home because again, it's not if you're against even mortars from guard, cultists on your back point will just get mortared off. And you'll have sticky, but again, it opens up space. But these guys, 5 up feel no pains, especially people who've played with feel no pains, they can be really spiky. You can survive stuff you have no right to survive because especially if you play against crypto thralls.
And the last thing I wanted to say is that you don't have dev wounds, mortal wounds spilling over and killing 9 of these dudes with a shot. They kill 1 of them, and that guy gets a feel no pain. So, it is very funny. Better than a custodian against a dev wound. Senor Poxwalker. All right. So what's the next one, brother?
So we still on infantry?
Yeah.
I'll just give an honorable mention to cultists. Having scout in an army that's slow is really important. Not only can it push back stuff like if people are bringing drop pods or going for early deep strikes, just having you're an army that's like you said slow. So being able to scout 6 potentially, and again some deployments and missions you can actually scout onto the objective pre-game, which means then in your first turn, in your command phase, you can pre-sticky the objective. and then you can just move back into safety. And what that means is your opponent has to come out and expose themselves, or you're just going to run away with primary for literally doing nothing. You're just going to get free primary. So having like 1 unit of 10 cultists in your army, in case that mission comes up and you get first turn, it's gross for just putting pressure on your opponent to make something happen.
All right, give us a vehicle, mate, or a monster.
Vehicle or monster. What do I want to go for? Man, I really don't want to rag on Plague with Scrolls, but man, Plague with Scrolls is so good.
Are they the best thing in the book? Very possibly still, and they will have been. If they are the best thing in the book now, they will have been the best thing in the faction for 7 years.
Yeah, I reckon they still are, to be honest. It's defensively, it's a good profile. It moves 10 as well. It's as fast as our bloat drones. Toughness 10, which is good. Tough again. People were like, "Oh, should not be tougher," but it got a 2-up save, which is probably better than being T11 3-up save. 2-up save plus cover in the game at the moment, so he's like you hide, you backtrack. Is really good. There are also 12 wounds, which is quite nice. A lot of tanks are 10 or 11. 12 is quite nice. OC4, which is weirdly high. You know, like it's not easy to take off these tanks. But again, it's I think Death Guard have the best indirect in the game at the moment. And it's
Big
because
call.
of I think it is, to be honest, because it's the combination of Mortarion and then other effects like Boil Bite and Lord of Virulence. You can just ignore all negatives, so you can ignore -1 to be hit. You can ignore the indirect penalty, any minuses to wound or anything that just gets completely ignored, and you can just put, like I said, 3d6 plus 9 shots plus blast possibly into any unit at any point across the board. And what this does, people talk a lot about understanding who has to be the aggressor and who has to be the defender. And when Death Guard have to be the aggressor, it's not great because you're a slow army.
Yeah.
So being able to put pressure on your opponent to make something happen, because I'll happily sit here and just mortar off your units turn after turn after turn, makes them have to come towards you, which then you can bring to bear that close range brawling abilities.
Yep.
And they're the only unit in this army that can force, like if you don't take them, the alternate is like going like a Rhino Rush Plague Marines, which we saw with Trimble. It does work, don't get me wrong. But I think Plague with Scrolls play this game of making your opponent have to expose themselves and have to make that. It puts the onus on them to make the game progress, because you can just send out 10 Poxogs, it's 50 points. You stand on objective, you die, I don't care. Cultists, again, you go do it, I don't care. Whereas if you're against an army that doesn't have access to them units, they're having to send out, you're mortaring off, like 150 point unit a turn.
Yeah.
And they're running out of resources, and if they commit too late to it, they'll just never recover on the value that you've obviously got over the turns. The other thing with them is they have a lot of more vehicles like this, like Basilisks, etc., can really struggle to protect themselves. But Plague of Scrolls can take Twin Plague Spears, which will be 2d6 anti-infantry 2+ AP1 flamers. And again, if you've got the -1 save contagion, anyone that wants to come and brawl with your tanks is potentially taking Overwatch from 2d6 anti-infantry 2+, potentially AP2 flamers. Never mind if you roll any 6s to hit with the mortar and the machine gun on the thing. They're incredibly good at bullying units. They're incredibly good at just projecting pressure. And it also enables other units in the army to it, like Brigands, for example. A lot of people really like Brigands because Brigands plus -1 save, plus their ability to naturally get an extra AP if they shoot something close. You get AP3 chain cannons and AP6 melter thermal spears. The negative thing about Brigands is a 24-inch range. Doesn't matter when you're forcing your opponent to come to you. Again, you're making up for that lack of range because they have to come to you to interact, and then you can then take advantage of that by exposing the Brigands and picking up whatever's trying to push you. It's just a unit that affects the game flow and affects like how the opponent has to play. And if they don't understand how to have to play around it, sometimes you can get free wins from people just panicking and not knowing how to deal with indirect.
165 points. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the Entropies or the Plague Spitters?
I go 2 with Plague Spitters and 1 with Entropies, mainly because just a slight lack of anti-tank. Don't like the range of the Entropies. It's only 24 inches.
But sucks.
Yeah, I wish it was still 36, but I like to bring them just in case you run into something like a night matchup to have the extra anti-tank there.
All right, bring us to one more Gribbly. I think we already talked about the Hellbrute, what it can bring, the fact that, something that is hit gets contagion range, which is the biggest reason to bring it, and I think it's a good reason to bring one in a lot of lists. But give us another Gribbly, mate.
Bloat Drone, probably. Bloat Drone at the moment.
Yeah, boy!
It's so good. It went down from 135 points to 100 points, which for a movement 10, toughness 9, 3 up save, 5 up invulnerable, 10 wound model with OC 3 is just good value for chassis, regardless of weapons.
Yeah.
Then you look at its weapons, and you can either have a heavy blight launcher for 6 shots at strength 8, AP 2, damage 2. That's quite high AP. Again,
Yeah, it's
you
good.
stack on the -1 save. It's AP 3 now, and it's 36-inch range, which is long range for Death Guard. This thing's great for just skirting up and down the sides of the board, taking pot shots, staying out of the majority of the danger, and being there for secondaries like engage. You can take
But-
Flesh Mold for 10 attacks.
Yeah,
Go
I was
on.
about to say, or you could be a freaking Chad and take a flesh mower.
You take a Flesh
Yeah.
Mower, which is 10
Who's-
attacks in melee and just basically a marine blending profile. It's lethal hit, strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage. And like you said, it's if you just charge it in with this thing, 10 attacks is a lot of attacks. This is another good use for potentially popping sustained hits, maybe getting some extra ones. This thing has always been like a marine killer. If you're a standard marine profile, like you're gonna have a bad time against a flesh mower. Now especially, the one thing that let it down this edition was AP1, but now again we're talking about -1 save, potentially then popping Ferric Blight, and now it's AP3.
Yep.
It's gross. And again, the rule of this model as well is it can shoot and declare charge in a turn if it falls back. So you can't lock down bloat drones. They can always be shooting, they can always be charging. And what's good about it is means even if you're a unit like a flesh mower, which is in combat and you're going to swing first or whatever, it doesn't really matter. You still will probably want to fall back because it means you can fall back over the unit because you got fly, spread contagions a little deeper in the lines, help out pop a boil light on a unit for your plagueless crawls, and then charge back into the unit that you were already in combat with. It just you can't lock it down, you can't stop it doing what it wants. You've just drew teleport homers. Okay, I'll just fall back and teleport homers instead.
Yeah.
It's just like this little versatile toolkit, and like you take plague spitters even there. You've got a big board control piece because you just sit around with these anti-infantry 2+ flamers and just sit there and you go, okay, I'm gonna fall back out of combat next to this squishy unit here. I'm gonna do an action, and then your turn, if you want to move this squishy unit, I'll overwatch it and kill it. There's so many potentials for this unit to just impact the game. Plus, it's a fast unit. It's great for spreading contagions. It's 100 points. What were they thinking?
There are so many instances of things that just now cost 100 points.
It's just like how much are intercessors? Like 90.
Yeah.
It's 10 points more
It's good.
for like all of these stats, all of these weapons, and these abilities. Like,
Yeah.
it's
really good, man.
no-brainer.
Really good.
It's really, really good.
Okay, last one we're going to cover. Of course, we're going to cover the Plague Lord himself, the true Stank Lord, actually, the one and only Mortarion. He is 325 points, so he's come down twice since his release.
Don't know why. I have no idea why.
It's so cheap. Movement 10, toughness 12, 2+ saves, 16 wounds. Of course, he's got a 4+ invulnerable save, OC 6. He's got his psychic power, which is Rotwind, which is blast and dev wounds at 18-inch range with lethal hits. D6 +3 shots, hitting on 2s at 7-2-1, and then there's the lantern, which is pistol sustained D3, 18-inch of 933 on the profile. In combat, he's got a laughable, absolutely WTF 5 attacks on a Primarch at strength 14, -3, 4 damage. It's not even D6 +3, sorry, D3 +3 on, it's flat 4. D3 +3 is flat 4. It's 4
He's
to
trying
6.
his best.
Anyway,
Come on.
and then he's got 15 attacks at 7-1-1. So yeah, he can
Just
swing
a
that thing as hard
reminder,
as
the lion sweeps at damage 2. The 15-foot scythe does 1 damage.
Hellbrecht, a chapter master, sweeps at damage 2.
Yay.
Dude. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand why he's so bad at melee. He's the freaking avatar of Nurgle. Give him 7 attacks for the love of the Lord. All right, tell us about all these special abilities.
So Mortarion gets a selection of 3 auras that he can pick at the start of the command phase. First of these is Miasma of Pestilence, which means that every Death Guard unit within 6 of this model receives the benefit of cover against ranged attacks, which is nice to have, but anyone that played 10th edition, it's quite easy to get cover anyway. So at first, everyone thought this was going to be like amazing go-to. Honestly, you don't really tend to use it because of how easy it is to get cover in the game. The second one is the real money maker, which is Diseased Influence. While a friendly Death Guard unit is within 6 inches of this model, every time that unit makes an attack, reroll a wound roll of 1. It's just a solid buff, rerolling wounds of 1 and an aura around a big model. You're never going to say no. Rerolling wounds is good. rerolling wounds on full units just for being near a guy is even better. Consistency. It's just good. It's not much to talk about because it is just a reroll wound roll of 1, but it's just solid. Which is really nice in Plague Burst Crawlers again. So not to rag on. Toxic Presence Aura. While a friendly Death Guard unit is within 12 inches of this model, add 3 inches of the contagion range of this unit. I would have laughed at you if you used this a month ago. Grats, you made me -1 toughness 3 inches further away. Now it can actually have niche uses. For example, versus Grey Knights, you don't want to get Mists of Demost, so you can't get within 9. So then you extend your contagion to 12 instead and get them tagged in it from outside of it, and then Plague Burst Crawl the units to death.
Yeah, it's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. You can. So there's time. It's a that one you look more as a tool. You never get like the reroll wound rolls of 1 is like your staple. That's always on. I always just say to my opponent, if I don't declare I'm changing it, it's that. But when it comes up, Toxic Presence to have is very nice. And he's other auras, so he gets to pick one of those, but then he also gets this. And this is the most important thing about Morty.
It is.
Because Mortarion is basically the nope machine. So while a friendly Death Guard unit is within 6 inches of this model, that unit can ignore all modifiers to its characteristics and to any roll or test made for it, excluding saving throws, of course. Can't just ignore AP in the game. So what this means is, Mortarion, I call him the nope machine, because you go to shoot something, your opponent starts explaining whatever they're going to do, stealth, -1 to it, and you just say, just don't bother. I don't care. I am ignoring it. And then someone's like, oh, he's half damage. No, he's not. He's the ability to basically just get all your opponent's defensive abilities and just say, no, you're not having it, can really mess with people, because especially people who don't play against this effect much, because people get into comfortable how much damage a unit can take, and then you come along and just say, yeah, all that stuff you used to like -1 damage on like Deathwing Knights, you're not having it.
No,
and then suddenly you just delete a unit that they thought was going to survive a turn, and it's so powerful.
In addition, this stops the negatives to move, doesn't it?
Yes, it stops negatives to move. It also means even if you fail Battle Shock test, your OC doesn't go down, so you can still hold objectives, which is cute.
Battle Shock is virtually meaningless apart from not being able to use strats.
Yeah, but you can't. It's what can't they do? They can't half damage you. They can't -1 damage you. They can't Armor of Contempt you. They can't reduce your movement. They can reduce your toughness, which is funny in the mirror. In the mirror, it just becomes like nothing works. Death Guard mirror is awful, by the way. You just keep going, oh yeah, that, and you go, oh no, it doesn't work because I'm more tight. Oh yeah.
That is pretty funny.
Like you'll come up so many times where you'll be doing like you ignore indirect penalty. That's why again, so you can just without any buffs, you're still hitting on freeze with indirect, which is again wild. It's what doesn't it cover? It's such a powerful, like anyone that's played with a unit with this ability, it comes up so many times, and it's just so good to have. Like someone's -2 to check. Nope, ignore that.
Yeah.
so many applications.
And for 325, he's probably a bargain at the moment. I mean, it is a bit awkward that he doesn't kill anything to save his life. So you're paying 325 essentially for a supreme buff character. But we've been there, we've done that in the past. It's not too unpalatable at that price point.
He's OC6, who's relatively hard to kill. It's not, he can still stand on a point, and he's got a big base, he can cover the point.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, the thing is, though, he's such a wet noodle that he gets to stick around for 5 turns. Whereas you have things that are 3 times more and I come back to this. This is a point I've made in the game since 8th edition. You have something that is non-threatening, like a Wave Serpent in 8th edition was the best example of this, that it was non-threatening but difficult to kill. So no one bothered trying to kill it. Where then you had, let's say, for example, a Void Weaver in 9th edition, which was very threatening and must die. If that one dies turn 1, but the Wave Serpent lives all the whole game, that Wave Serpent has done significantly more damage and affected the game significantly more than that Void Weaver did. This is what Mortarion is. He's a wet freaking noodle. I don't want to shoot him or do anything, so he just have 5 turns of influence on the game, and this is why I think he's good.
Yeah, like you say, and the opposite happens if they get in their own mindset of trying to kill this guy. It means that your other stuff isn't being shot, and he's the toughest thing in the army. So either way they pick there, you're kind of winning, because like you either have Morty running free for 5 turns, or you have Morty getting shot to hell, but everything else is free for 5 turns.
Correct. Yeah, he's a distraction Carnifex.
He is probably one of the biggest distraction Carnifex in the game. and he's one of the prettiest as well. I think he's one of the best
Yeah,
models I've ever made.
he's handsome boy. At least his mother thinks so. Anyway, on that note, we are going to wrap this episode up. Sorry, we got the two metrics we have to rate this index upon. Firstly, out of 10, how happy are you with this index right now?
So right now, after the buffs,
After the buffs.
I'm really happy to be honest. I'm honestly going to say like a 9.
Man, dude, nice.
It's just again, it feels fun. It doesn't feel. I've never been a massive fan. Like it sounds odd to play. Like I'm not a fan of Death Guard's identity just being tough because being tough in this game, you're either tough to the point where it's toxic for the game, or you're not tough enough for the meta and you just die still regardless.
Mm.
So them leaning more into the idea of like debilitation and debuffs for being near us to me is far more fun. And again, it gives me more agency rather than hoping I roll saves and you don't kill me. Like being able to extend contagions, get them where I need them, and then be as impactful as they are right now. It's just such a blast to play, and especially like when we get into play with your big Mortari model again. Yeah, I just wish he. That's the one point that's missing. I just wish like the big man himself actually swung.
Mm.
but
Yeah.
but I think right now the index as a whole, there's not many Duff units part of Plague Surgeon, but every unit can have a place, and that's really
What would you have given it out of 10 pre-data slate?
Oh man. Oh god. Like I was gonna say 4, but that feels generous.
It does,
Probably,
really. I was going to say 1 or a 2.
yeah, you're not far off. Probably like a 2. I mean,
Mm,
so I made it work. I went 4-1 at a super major
you
and
did.
5-0 at GT with the pre-thingy Death Guard, but the best way to describe it is when you go in a game and you pick nightmare difficulty,
Yes.
that was your casual event. That was not even your event game. That was your casual club night game.
Yeah.
And just nothing kind of had purpose and nothing flowed. Like you were like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna jump through these 5 hoops to get my contagion on you, and your tank is now toughness 10, and it makes no difference.
Yes. Yeah, did literally nothing. All right. Where do you think Death Guard's going to end up in the competitive lexicon, like the competitive ladder? So the D tier, C tier, B tier, A tier, S tier. Where are they going to end up?
Um, so I don't think Death Guard will ever be an S tier army. I don't think it's possible. The game compared to the higher events is really about movement, and it's just not an army battle. But that's okay.
Hmm.
Like not every army has to be S tier, but my hope and want for Death Guard is it to always just be in B tier, just a solid middle army. And I think at the moment that's where it is. You have potential to swing up. You have potential to have play into most armies now. I feel like.
Yep.
But you're not broken, and if you will, you will be punished. And if a broken army faces you, it's going to be an uphill battle. So
Hmm.
right now, and I still think there's a lot of people stuck on the old way of playing Death Guard, where they think they can just stand in the open and not die, which
Yep.
is something I'm trying to change with my channel. I'm trying to get people to understand it's not how we work anymore. But I think if everyone starts sort of adopting the new way to approach Death Guard, I reckon it can be a very solid middle table and a bit of a mid-board bully, a bit of a mid-table bully, a bit of a pub stomper. Like if you're not prepared for it, it'll just run you over. But I think the higher echelons of players with the good strong armies will still be able to sort of just run circles around you. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you can be an underdog army and still have fun at events. Like that's what I do.
Yeah, my biggest issue with Death Guard has always been how predictable what they do is. As in, like, if you just pre-measure how far they're going to move and then how far their contagion is going to extend from their base after they move, like 90% of their rules don't happen. They're just like, cool, 90%. Yeah, I'm going to stay 0.2 inches away from that place where the contagion is going to reach, and then cool. So okay, all that nonsense you read out at the start, none of that happens if I just do that. And then you have to nod and be like, yeah, unfortunately, that's correct.
Yeah, and I think if we just got if we get a new detachment and that sort of gives us some more stratagems that can sort of impact that, so like maybe like a stratagem which is living plague on a stick, one command point, pick a unit, give it an extra 6, just something like that.
Correct.
Nice.
Or what was the one where you used to be able to transpose your sickness from one objective to another?
Yeah, you were
stuff like that.
Outbreak. Yeah,
brilliant, absolutely brilliant to put a little X factor, because that's what I think the list is, the faction is lacking. It's lacking X factor, as in like some explosive little bit of something to mix up your opponent's battle plan. So that's why I agree with you. Very solid B tier.
It's a very honest army. Like it's not gonna. There's no phantasms. There's no nothing. Like it does what it does, and it's either gonna do that well and win, or this is not going to work and they're going to lose. So maybe just adding a little bit more of ability to be like, hey, you got me by surprise there. That was quite cheeky. You know,
And
that would make this army like 10 for me.
correct. And I'm not saying this army needs a gotcha, because that's not what I'm describing. What I'm describing is
No.
something that acts in an unexpected fashion. You know, something that does something more than it appears on face up on the front of the box. And yeah, but the fact of the matter is, I think Death Guard reside exactly where I think every faction should reside.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
If every faction was the same level and face up and honesty of Death Guard, this game would be a utopia. It would be absolutely amazing. But anyway, it is not, and we will truck on with part 2, mate. Good luck at the LGT. Our
Thank you very
hopes
much.
and our prayers are with you. You know, what's your goal? What do you try to achieve? Like, what is a pass goal for you?
So my personal goals, like I want to get a 4-1, but like as a personal goal, like I'm just gonna try and just enjoy London, as in general. I mean, as long as I go positive, I'll be relatively happy. So 3-2 happy, 4-1
Yep.
buzzing, 5-1. Yeah, I'm gonna be like holding up the trophy as if it's my own. I'm
Hell,
just gonna steal it and
yeah.
take it home.
You
I don't care
you
what's
can't
going around.
you Kanye that podium. You
Literally.
you push those Muppets out of the side.
I'm gonna stop you right there, Manny.
All right, mate. On that note, we are going to check out. Please come and join us over at part 2 over on Patreon, and go check out the Disgusting Resilient podcast, mate. Where can people find that?
So that we're mainly on YouTube, and we're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but mainly it's YouTube. You'll find us on.
Fan-freaking-tastic. And on that note, we will see you later. Take care and enjoy whatever you may be doing out there. And hopefully this new meta has invigorated you just like me, just like us, just like many out there. And let's go and enjoy some 10th edition. Take care. Have a good night.
Thanks, man. See you later.
Thank you for listening to Art of War Down Under, a content review podcast for Warhammer 40k, hosted by Adam Camilleri, produced by Seamus Ronan. Enjoyed the show? Want your lists reviewed and the content you heard put into practice? Sign up to our Patreon and connect with us online or on Facebook. Just search for Art of War Down Under. Signing out from tomorrow.